19th century. So it's a very historical book. We have had the honor to already skim through it before, and it looks very impressive, to be honest. He also has great knowledge on the EU, as he was previously based in Poland at the Institute of Political Studies of the Polish Academy of Sciences and the Diplomatic Academy at the Polish Institute of International Affairs. So welcome, Mr. Sylvie Mazarov. Next we have Mr. Jean de Bradon. He is a lawyer and an economic diplomat who frequently travels to Kazakhstan and the region. He focuses on legal consistent entrepreneurship, and since 2018, he is also the honorary consul of Malta in Belgium for the province of Limburg. Besides this, he's active as a coordinator of the expertise pillar for technology, science, and innovation at the Brussels Diplomatic Academy of the Free University of Brussels, where he's also the advisor to the CIS countries. And then, of course, last but not least, an old friend of the Institute as well, Mr. Murat Defterov. He is a specialist on energy specifically, as the head of expansion activities at the Energy Charter Secretariat here in Brussels. But he's also the founder and executive director of the Brussels Energy Club. Well, having received his education in Australia, the United States, and the UK, well, he's also very much acquainted with both international affairs, energy issues, and especially also like with Kazakhstan and the region. So welcome to all of our speakers. And before we actually start with the real presentations, we actually have something prepared as the ribbon cutting ceremony for the book, as this is the official launch of Mr. Mazarov book. So can I invite all the speakers first to actually, for the picture and for the ribbon cutting, to move to the front of the stage.
And now you can grab t-shirt, you can grab one, and then
Go ahead. Go ahead. Well, I identified this. I don't think there's behind me. Okay.
Yes. In that case, I would like to give the floor first to Your Excellency Mr. Baymukhan, the Ambassador of the Republic of Kazakhstan to Brussels.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for your presentation, for your introduction. Of course, we have kind of restriction right now, despite the the pandemic situation. We have the opportunity to meet today, and thank you for you coming here and join with us just to celebrate our 30 years of anniversary. My speech could be a little bit long, but I hope it could be interesting information for you. And let's start our. Thank you very much. Once again. Your Excellencies, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, colleagues, it's a great pleasure and honor to see you all today, and I would like to thank you all for joining us. And my special gratitude goes to the head of the European Institute for Asian Studies, our good friend Mr. Bottles, and also his able colleague Madame Lynn Bottles for putting together this event today. Indeed, today's event is truly historic for me and for our country, as we celebrate 30th anniversary of independence of Kazakhstan. We are only 30 years old, but we have a very ancient history. We are proud descendants of the outstanding nomadic civilization of the Great Steppe, represented by numerous nomadic states and entities including the Sacs, the Han, the Turkish Khanate, the Golden Horde, and the Kazakh Khanate, which was established in 1465. As you know, modern Kazakhstan regained its independence on 16th December 1991, with Sultan Nazarbayev elected as the country's first president. At the dawn of the independence, Kazakhstan embarked on a series of reforms aimed at shifting the country's economy from the central planned system to a modern free market model and changing its one-party government to the multi-party democratic system. Over the past 30 years, Kazakhstan has established diplomatic relations with the 886 countries and transformed into one of the dynamically developing economies of Eurasia and the reputable diplomatic voice on the world stage. Today, Kazakhstan is a politically stable, economically dynamic country with a modern, open society. It's an economic powerhouse and largest economy in the Central Asia, accounting for more than half of the region's GDP. Our country's GDP is about $180 billion, according to the World Bank statistics, which has increased 16-fold since independence. One of the important economic milestones was Kazakhstan joined the World Trade Organization in 2015. Kazakhstan has attracted over $330 billion in foreign direct investment since independence. Kazakhstan accounts for approximately 70% of FDI into Central Asia, around 50% of FDI in Kazakhstan has been attracted from the European Union, including around 100 billion from Netherlands, 70 billion from France, 9 billion actually from Belgium, 7 billion from Italy, and 5 billion from Germany, etc. Kazakhstan is the regional leader in terms of economic reforms, openness to international trade, investment, and political stability. Kazakhstan has been introducing comprehensive reforms in recent years to strengthen protection for investors, cut red tape, make tax more transparent, and support entrepreneurship. Today's 90% of public services in Kazakhstan is available online, and we ranked the 29th in the UN e-government survey 2020 among 193 countries. It is the highest among CIS countries. As the largest landlocked country in the world, we are trying to make use of our geographical location, serving as the bridge between East and West. Kazakhstan accounts for 70% of transit traffic passing from China to Europe and vice versa. Apart from developing domestic economy, Kazakhstan strives to become a regional economic hub. With this purpose, the Astana International Financial Center was established in 2018. This center is guided by the English common law, with commercial dispute resolution conducted by top British lawyers. One of the pressing issues of today's economic agendas of any countries is the transition to green economy and fight against the climate change. Kazakhstan has been the first in Central Asia to enshrine the climate neutrality target by 2060 into its economic agenda. We were also the first in the CIS countries to ratify the Paris Agreement in December 2016. By 2030, Kazakhstan will reduce greenhouse gas emission by 15% compared to 1990 level. To stop the deforestation and restore degraded land on a massive scale, we will plant as many as 2 billion trees until 2025. It's a way Kazakhstan joined the Declaration of Forest and Land Use and the COP26 conference in Glasgow. Dear distinguished colleagues, excellencies, since independence 1991, Kazakhstan has consistently supported to foster a democratic and free society. With successful economic reforms implemented by the first president of Kazakhstan, Ilham Nazarbayev, that leads our country to enter the 50 competitive economies of the world, the government pays enormous attention to further democratization of the society. Since 2019, President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev embarked on further reforms aimed at modernization, the political system, and ensuring protection of human rights. He has initiated and implemented a number of political reforms packages. They include establishment of the National Council of Public Trust, an advisory body under the president to conduct open dialogue with the representatives of the public, legal formalization of an institute of the parliamentary opposition, 30% quota for women and young people to be included in political parties candidates lists, liberalization of peaceful assemblies and registration of political parties. Of course, lowering the threshold for political parties to enter parliament from 7% to 5%, or join the second optional protocol to the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, thus abolishing the death penalty, strengthening the role of Ombudsman for Human Rights. On Kazakhstan also, Kazakhstan positive human rights report has enabled us to get a seat of the UN Human Rights Council for 2020-2024. Dear ladies and gentlemen, EIAS plays a very important role in political modernization of our country. With this idea, in 1993, the government funded international scholarship, which is called Bolashak, introduced which allowed thousands of young Kazakhs to study at the world's top universities. There is about 15,000 Kazakh students who got their education at the top world universities of the US, EU, Japan, China, and others. Just recently, Bolashak and College of Europe signed a document on cooperation that will allow Kazakh students and professionals to study here in Belgium. By the way, during the last 5 years, the number of our students in Belgium increased from 20 to 200. It also indicates how important for us the higher education abroad. If I correct, we have at least 100,000 students now abroad. For example, in China, we have at least 13,000 students. So one thing I'd like also to mention today, after dissolution of the Soviet Union, Kazakhstan peacefully settled its borders with all the its neighboring states, including the longest land border in the world, more than 7,000 kilometers with the Russian Federation. Our country has implemented a multilateral foreign policy, established good relations worldwide. Kazakhstan is a world leader in the movement to ensure nuclear security. On August 1991, Kazakhstan closed Semipalatinsk nuclear test site and gave up the fourth largest nuclear arsenal in the world. Kazakhstan contributed to establishment of the Central Asian Nuclear Weapons Free Zone in 2009. Kazakhstan also permanently contributes to international efforts on the strengthening global and regional security, crisis settlement, intercultural dialogue, and sustainable development. We commend the conference of the International Confidence Building Merit in Asia, which is called SICA, which consists of 27 countries in our region. As you know, in 2010, Kazakhstan chaired the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe and hosted the first OSCE summit in 11 years, which adopted the Astana commemorative declaration toward the security community. Kazakhstan successfully chaired the Organization of Islamic Cooperation in 2011-2012. Kazakhstan became the first Central Asia country to be elected as a non-permanent member of United Nations Security Council for 2017-2018. As you know, also, of course, it's well-known information. Kazakhstan hosted the Expo 2017 in Nur-Sultan with the theme of future energy. Ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to our cooperation with the European Union, I would like to emphasize that Kazakhstan enjoys excellent relations with the European Union. This was highlighted during the President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev's official visit to Brussels just 2 weeks ago. During this visit, the President Tokayev had negotiations with the presidents of the European Council, European Commission, Mr. Charles Michel, Madame von der Leyen, as well the Belgians, King Philippe and the Prime Minister Alexander De Croo. This visit allowed the parties to compare their notes and identify the priority areas of cooperation and gave a strong impetus to the further strengthening the cooperation based on the friendship and trust. I should emphasize that this year was a breakthrough year in relation with the European Union. Apart from the dialogues of the highest level, we have had a series of important visits and events this year. For example, the visit of EU new special representative for Central Asia, Madame Tehri Hakala, to our capital last August, as well as the EU special representative for human rights, Mr. Ivan Gelmor, in September. At the same time, Kazakhstan official delegation visited Brussels. For example, special representative of Kazakhstan President for International Cooperation, Mr. Kazakhan, Minister of Justice, Minister of Trade and Integration, Ombudswoman for Human Rights in Kazakhstan, and Ombudswoman for Children's Rights paid visits here. When it comes to EU Central Asia cooperation, we also have had important events. Third Civil Society Forum Central Asia European Union held in Almaty in October was a huge success, as well as the first EU Central Asia Economic Forum that took place on November 5th in Bishkek. Central Asia South Asia Connectivity Summit, which was held in July this year in Tashkent, was another good sign of our cooperation. The outcomes of 17th EU-CA ministerial meeting in Dushanbe on November 22 are yet another indication of our firm commitment to developing region-to-region cooperation. It gives me great pleasure to observe that we have a strong treaty and institutional platform to build upon our collective efforts. The entry into force of the Enhanced Partnership Cooperation Agreement has taken our relationship to a new level. The EPCA covers 29 fields of cooperation, stretching from economic, trade, investment, and scientific cooperation to education, rule of law, culture, and sport. The EU countries are the biggest investors in Kazakhstan, with total capital inflow exceeding $150 billion since 2005. On this part, Kazakhstan is the European Union's leading trading partner in Central Asia, with the trade turnover amount $24 billion last year. COVID-19 have affected our economic collaboration. However, despite the pandemic has demonstrated that both Kazakhstan and the EU share priorities beyond traditional areas of cooperation, resource industries. For instance, in September of this year, we have finalized a deal to buy two military transport aircraft produced by Air Defense and Space for a total cost of 450 million euro. During the presidential visit 2 weeks ago, signing of groundbreaking accord with the German-Swedish company Sweden on joint production of green hydrogen in Kazakhstan was signed. This agreement will allow Kazakhstan to become one of the top hydrogen producers of the world. We strongly believe that the EU's Green Deal is a great opportunity to ensure a reliable and sustainable access to cleaner energy. In this regard, Kazakhstan could become an important partner for the European Raw Material Alliance and European Battery Alliance also. In the financial domain, I'm pleased to note Kazakhstan expanding cooperation with the European Investment Bank. The EIB's lending is important for supporting Kazakh SMEs during the pandemic situation. The European Investment Bank's financial support to Kazakhstan entities has reached more than 550 million euros in total. One thing I would like to emphasize about the regional cooperation, Central Asia, EU, and Afghanistan. Effective implementation of the new EU strategy for Central Asia and connectivity, as well as the new Global Gate initiative, contributes to deepening our cross-regional ties. Today, one of the most pressing issues of the regional agenda is the situation in Afghanistan. Both Kazakhstan and the EU are concerned with the potential spillover of militancy, drug trafficking, and uncontrolled migration beyond the Afghan borders. Afghanistan is currently facing an extremely dire situation which is due not only to protracted conflict but also severe drought under the COVID-19 pandemic. For its part, Kazakhstan has joined the race against time to deliver life-saving aid and ensure regular supplies of staple food. We dispatched 5,000 tons of flour as emergency aid in collaboration with the UN World Food Program. We also provided 20,000 tons of flour on commercial terms. We're also ready to provide a logistical platform for international humanitarian aid heading into that country. The Kazakh initiative to establish a regional hub in Almaty can serve this crucial mission. Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, Kazakhstan EU agenda is so broad and extensive that I'm afraid it will take only 1 hour meeting, our conference, to cover all the spheres of our cooperation. And I try to sum up most important and pressing issues of our bilateral and multilateral agenda. With this, I yield the floor to our next speaker and wish all the participants a very fruitful discussion today. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. I believe that Kazakhstan in the past 30 years has changed significantly, as you've already mentioned in your speech as well, GDP growth, everything else, but I think also as one of the more dynamic partners in the region, also for the EU. Therefore, I'm very happy that you mentioned a lot of different fields of cooperation, but amongst which, of course, also like higher education, foreign direct investments, people-to-people affairs, cultural aspects, but also connectivity. And well, among the global gateway initiative, and that was just recently launched as well. Question is now, how does Kazakhstan fit into the EU's foreign policy? So the floor is yours, Mr. Boris.
Thank you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. First of all, I would like to warmly congratulate you and the people of the Republic of Kazakhstan on the 30th anniversary of independence, a very important milestone. Ambassador, you always said it all, almost said it all. So I will try to add some important issues as seen from the EU angle. Indeed, we can say that it has been a very eventful time for EU-Kazakhstan relations, with indeed very successful first official visit of President Tokayev to Brussels. On our side, I think it was a timely opportunity to reflect on our bilateral relations, which have progressed steadily since your country's independence. It was also a key moment to renew our firm commitment to the implementation of the Enhanced Partnership and Cooperation Agreement. And Kazakhstan, as you said, is a key partner for the EU in Central Asia, and indeed the first Central Asian country to have signed an EPCA with the European Union. Also, the mutual solidarity we have shown to each other during the past difficult months has proven the importance of strong partnerships and cooperation. We share many common objectives for sustainable development, post-COVID green economic recovery, promotion of the rule of law and good governance, increasing prosperity and trade, and cooperation for regional peace and stability. And our strengthened cooperation in all these areas, including on human rights and democratization, has made us stronger to deal with the challenges facing us. And we mentioned COVID and other challenges like the economic impact of the COVID, not only the health situation. It was said Kazakhstan has achieved significant progress since independence on the national, regional, and global level. Under the leadership of first President Nazarbayev, and since 2019 under the leadership of President Tokayev, you have undertaken ambitious internal reforms and modernization processes. And Kazakhstan has also reached out with determination to build bridges with its neighbors and the European Union. The European Union has supported Kazakhstan since the country's independence. We implemented together more than 350 bilateral projects, notably in the field of strengthening the capacity of regional and local governments, on civil society, and in the field of reform of the justice sector, as well as supporting social and economic reforms. The full implementation of the trade part of the EPCA will further facilitate foreign investment and diversification of Kazakhstan's economy. I would like to mention here the EU-Kazakhstan high-level business platform, launched in Nur-Sultan in 2019, chaired by Prime Minister Mamin. And this platform has proven a very successful tool in improving the business and investment climate and discussing important areas of cooperation. And I would like to mention a few topics which have been discussed or will be discussed. For instance, the transition to low carbon and green technologies, the critical raw materials issue that you have mentioned, but also the carbon border adjustment mechanism, which will have an impact on our bilateral trade, and also sustainable forestry and agriculture. We are also in the framework of our 21-27 cooperation program. We will also allocate funds to support cooperation and implementation of the EPCA. It will be a facility with two priority areas: sustainable economic growth and rule of law. So we'll continue to have a joint project. I'd like also to mention that at the regional level, we will work together with our other Central Asian partners. And here we are, for instance, working on two large programs, one dealing with digitalization, which is extremely important, I think, for all of us. And the second program will be dealing with water issues, and you mentioned RRC and the efforts done there by your country, but Uzbekistan is doing a lot, and it has an impact on the whole region, on upstream countries as well, such as Tajikistan and the Kyrgyz Republic. You mentioned Bolashak, but we have also the Erasmus Plus program supporting mobility of students and academic staff and capacity building projects. And so far, more than 3,300 Kazakh students and staff have managed to come to Europe in the framework of Erasmus Plus. And on the other hand, 1,500 European students were hosted in Kazakh institutions. So I just recall that the Erasmus is a green exchange program which works both ways. And I very much welcome the news of your agreement with the College of Europe and the very positive dynamics in student exchanges with Belgium and with the European Union. When looking forward, we see indeed huge potential in supporting a green, inclusive and sustainable post-COVID recovery and strengthening cooperation on digitalization that I mentioned and sustainable connectivity. We very much welcome Kazakhstan's ambitious goal to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 15% in 2030 and to achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. I think it was an important announcement at the COP26 in Glasgow last month. So the EU is supportive of Kazakhstan's green agenda, and it's firmly committed to diversify with you your economy and address climate change. We are happy that Kazakhstan is interested in stepping up cooperation with the EU and European companies in low carbon and green technologies to meet your greenhouse gas reduction targets. And green hydrogen, I think, is a big step and a great potential for Kazakhstan. You mentioned the EIB. I would like also here to refer to the EBRD. And the EBRD is currently designing a new country strategy for Kazakhstan for the years 22-27. So it means that EBRD as well will continue to work together with you on a number of issues, of course, related to a green economy and sustainable development. You said a lot, Ambassador, on Kazakhstan as a regional player and your role in promoting peace, security, and stability in the region. We very much welcome the closer cooperation between the Central Asian states and your efforts to bring Afghanistan closer into this cooperation. We appreciate a lot your support for the relocation of UN staff and creating a hub in Almaty for humanitarian aid to Afghanistan. You already mentioned our very busy regional agenda in the past weeks, the very successful EU Central Asia Economic Forum, the first one, which took place in Bishkek on the 5th of November. And I would like to mention here the meeting between your Prime Minister and Mr. Dombrovskis, which was extremely appreciated. We also had very recently the EU Central Asia Ministerial in Dushanbe, which was also a big success, as demonstrated by the presence of our High Representative Mr. Borrell and Mrs. Urpilainen, the Commissioner for International Partnerships. And I would like to say that Central Asia will be on the agenda of the next European Union Foreign Affairs Council Monday, because there is a big interest among our member states about deepening cooperation with Central Asia, not only in the context of Afghanistan, but in the broader context also of connectivity. As you know, we have designed a EU strategy on Central Asia 2 years ago, which is still very much relevant and to guide our engagement in the region, even in the post-pandemic context, which was not expected in that time, of course. You mentioned the global gateway. Indeed, I mean, connectivity is extremely important. We had a first strategy in 2018, and now we have a new strategy which is even more global, which foresees investments in infrastructures, but also a lot of work in enabling legal business environment. So two big strands, which also foresees a lot of partnerships with interested countries. So I think Kazakhstan is very well placed to benefit together with our other Central Asian partners from this new strategy. You mentioned your role in the UN Security Council, the coming membership in the Human Rights Council. I will not repeat that. I would like just to stress your very positive and active role in the context of the OECE, even after the 2010 summit, even after the latest Ministerial Council, which took place last week in a very difficult context, as we know. I would like also to very much mark the closure of the Semipalatinsk nuclear test site. You mentioned it, and I've seen very interesting leaflets that are distributed. Indeed, I think that was a very important step, and we very much welcome your priority to achieve a nuclear-free world. So all this, to conclude, demonstrates that we are partners in Kazakhstan and that we share a lot of common interests and priorities. And I would like to wish that the next 30 years of cooperation will be even more fruitful than the first 3 decades of our bilateral relations. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Jovicic, to highlight it from the European side, how important actually relations are with Kazakhstan, also as a player in the region, of course, especially by strengthening, of course, connectivity, sustainable connectivity in particular, but also digitalization, as you mentioned, water issues in the Aral Sea, which is going to be a major issue in the next couple of years for sure. But then, of course, also in terms of like greenhouse gas emissions, carbon neutrality, and I think that's also like one of the main, key aspects for the EU in view of the Green Deal. So to that extent, there's a lot of cooperation possible, and of course in FDI and cooperation, capacity building, and as you mentioned, through mobility and Erasmus Plus, but also development cooperation. So there's a lot to be done, and I think now we will first also shift a bit more to the historical side of Kazakhstan and its development itself, but also maybe like with relations to the EU there. So Mr. Sidi Nazarov, I think the floor is yours.
Greetings from Kazakhstan. Before starting my speech, I want to say 2 important things. The first is to congratulate all of us, Kazakhs, all friends of Kazakhstan in Europe, in Belgium, on the celebration of the 30th anniversary of independence of Kazakhstan. Second, I want to thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Kazakhstan and personally thank the Minister, Mr. Tilberdi Mukhtar Beskenullah. I express my deep gratitude to the Embassy of Republic of Kazakhstan in the Kingdom of Belgium and is the Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Kazakhstan to the Kingdom of Belgium, the head of representative office in the Republic of Kazakhstan to the European Union and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, Mr. Baymuhan Margulan Bahutulov, for full support of publishing this book. Let's applaud these wonderful people. This book would not have seen the light of day without the effort of the entire Embassy of Kazakhstan in Brussels, and especially without the help of the Consul of the Embassy of Kazakhstan in Belgium, Mr. Nurjan Aytmahanov, who successfully and quickly resolved all of the organizational issues during such a difficult period of pandemic restriction in Belgium and dealt with any concern related to the publication of the book. I applaud all the diplomats of our embassy. You are the best. Thank you. The book is being released on the eve of the celebration of the beginning of the fourth decade of Kazakhstan independence, a state that is a geopolitical entity recognized and active in the international arena. The Kazakhstan 25th Strategy states on December 16, 1991, we, the people of Kazakhstan, choose sovereignty, freedom, openness to the world. Today, these values have become a part of our daily lives. Located in the heart of Eurasia, Kazakhstan has been and remains a bridge between East and West Asian Europe with its own unique civilizational model that has given a lot to the world. Modern and successful Kazakhstan raised a genuine interest abroad thanks to a balanced geopolitical course of international affairs, personal initiatives of the first president of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev, the Kazakh people that have millennial tradition, its nationhood, political and historical destinies, culture, its place in time and space, development prospects, the uniqueness of the geopolitical position at the intersection of all of the main power lines of civilization have always been in the focus of the leader of the nation. The focus of maintaining the supreme value of the state's independence and sovereignty of Kazakhstan, its prosperity, for the promotion of a multi-vector foreign policy that takes into account the priority of national interest in actively and effectively continued by the President of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. As President Tokayev notes in his State of the Nation address, independence is our highest value. Kazakhstan is entering a completely new era, bringing fundamental change in all spheres of life. We need to strengthen our values from a clear image of the future. End of citation. A clear image of the future consists of reliable knowledge about the rich and eventful past, the uninterrupted nationhood of Kazakhstan, its political position on the world map, and the flow of history past and present. This book, is symbolically published in Brussels. Brussels is the capital of the Kingdom of Belgium, the capital of the European Union, the community of countries whose geographers, cartographers, travelers, diplomats of the Middle Age and the early modern times left numerous valuable artifacts of that period. Maps of the world where the Kazakh state is clearly indicated. The book, according to Tartu, the established Kazakh tradition, is a gift from the author for the anniversary of independence of Kazakhstan. Dear guests and participants of this conference, of this presentation, the book with maps and atlases of the 16th and 19th centuries that you are holding in your hands before is the result of 15 years of my proactive studies in searching for maps in world collections, European, American, Oriental, where the Kazakh state is indicated and recorded. The book chronologically presents, describes, and gives complete information and technical parameters of 130 maps containing the author, description, and comments. First seen in European museums and collections, and later in the United States, the maps and atlases of the Middle Age that indicate the Kazakh state motivated me as a Kazakh and a scientist to a scientific research for maps and atlases around the world, the scrupulous study, systematization, differentiation, comparison, research, comments, translation. A historical geographical record and identification of particular states of maps of the past is the most important attribute in systemic, complex historical and political, cultural studies of the nationhood of any country, its political identity and continuity, its confident aspiration to the future, and on the example of Kazakhstan, confirmation of uninterrupted nationhood shown on maps and atlases of the world. By the end of the 15th century, an important process in the further development of nationhood of Kazakhs has been institutionally completed. The acquisition and dissemination of the national name Kazakh, the name of their state, Mamlakati Kazakh, endonym and the Kratonim Kazakh, which was first pointed out in the key historical work, the Tarikhi Rashidi, of an outstanding medieval statesman and politician, commander, scientist, and historian of the East, Mirza Muhammad Haidar Dulati. Previous rich experience in the development and formation of the nationhood of the Turks, ethnopolitical self-awareness affected by all standard political, territorial, ethnic, military, administrative infrastructure, advanced accounting, financial and tax system, historical and political order of Kazakh elites to promote their own nationhood. All these and other factors influenced the success of emergence and promotion of the young Kazakh states on the world and Eurasian geopolitical map in the 15th century. By the turn of the 16th century, within a short time by historical standards, having developed into a powerful centralized state, it has become an active geopolitical entity which was reflected in the fact the world and regional maps as well as atlases of European and later American researchers and cartographers recorded and identified the Kazakh states. All the printed maps and atlases of the world, Europe and Asia presented in this book, on which the Kazakh state is shown by European and American cartographers, are emotionally and visually captivating and attractive. The location of objects of many European maps of the 15th, 19th centuries, due to the development of geographical cartography studies of the time, are not always accurate in detail, and our modern cartographic view of the world, supported by accurate satellite image, differ. This is understandable and acceptable. However, European and American maps show that, in general, the location and borders of Kazakh state coincide with our ideas and historical and cultural data. The emergence of young, sovereign, political, active, and highly passionate Kazakh states on the political map of the world in the middle of the 15th century is further development in this period coincide with the beginning of the era of great geographical discoveries, the search for new trade routes to the east and to Asia from Europeans. Mutual interest and bilateral Kazakh-European pragmatism met. These maps for Europeans and Americans of that time were a navigational means of orientation, access to understanding of Eurasian lands, Asia, the East, as whole of the Kazakh state, establishing diplomatic, trade, economic, military, political, cultural, and other ties with them. One is impressed by breadth and diversity with a certain unity and proximity to the original sounds of Kazakhs and learning scientific, historical, and political fixation recorded and transcribed by word, including European cartographers, travelers, diplomats, and the Middle Age, early modern period of maps developed by them in their national language, scientific Latin, and language such as Dutch, Flemish, English, French, Italian, Walloon, Frisian, German, and other languages are impressive. Autochrononym, endonym, and polytonym of Kazakh states, Kazakh, in European language defined on the maps 15, 16 under exoethnonyms, exopolytonyms, and exocratonyms, pays the Kazakhs, Lander Kazakhan, independent Tatары, independent Kazakhs, Kazaki, Kasakia, Kasakhy, Kaltsak Stati del Tartaro, Kazakhids, Kaltsak, Shazakhids, Kozak Erans, Kazakia, Kazakia Horda, Kyrgyz Kazakh, and many others. In the advanced cartographic publishing houses of Netherlands, Belgium, England, France, Scotland, Italy, Germany, Austria, and the USA, the Kazakh state is consistently present on the published political and other atlases during this historical period. The absolute majority of European American maps of 16th, 19th centuries found and published in this book where the Kazakh state is indicated, including scientific data such as system parameter maps are introduced into the research, scientific, educational, cultural information circulation in Kazakhstan for the first time. It's very important for us, for our history, our studies. We are sure that it will become the basis for the future impactful cross-disciplinary research. Moreover, the maps of this book illustrate polytonyms, cratonyms of our neighboring states, the people of Eurasia, Central Asia, during the period covered. The purpose of the book is not to study the correspondence of the maps of the 16th, 19th centuries to advance the technological modernity, search for and indicate inaccuracies, errors in toponymy in the maps of scientists, travelers, geographers, and cartographers of the time, comparison with the modern borders of these states, comparison of maps of the past with modern geo-references, spatial location data, included digital one, etc. The purpose of the book, as mentioned above, is to present, fix, and introduce to the scientific research, cultural and informational circulation numerous European and American maps where the Kazakh state is indicated for further interdisciplinary study. The book is devoted to the anniversary of Kazakhstan's independence. I dedicated this book for our independent and my beloved mother, who brought me as a patriot, instilling in me from childhood the habit of attentive reading and research and a great love for our native land of Kazakhstan. I hope that this book would be both valuable and useful. Enjoy your reading. Thanks a lot for attention.
Well, thank you very much for, first of all, presenting this book here today. And actually, I think this is one of the best places for you to be able to present it, as this is also called the Mercator building, as you already indicated yesterday. So we all grew up with Mercator and his work. So I think this is also a very important contribution to it.
Yes, Mercator is first cartographers who described our states in European maps. It's very important scientist for us.
I think for everybody in the world, but anyways. And so I think it's also very clear that Kazakhstan has always been an international hub and, well, a very important crossroads, basically, even historically. And so I think it's all up to us to congratulate you with all the hard work that you've put into this, the creation of this book, which took you almost half of Kazakhstan's independence. So congratulations, and I think it's, well, I invite everybody to actually have a look at the maps, because it's actually very, it's very historical, it's very interesting to read. But let's now continue, and I would like to give the floor to Mr. Jean de Brabant, to give his views on Kazakhstan and EU-Kazakhstan relations, basically.
First of all, thank you, Lynn, Your Excellency, Excellencies in the room, dear friends. The advantage of not being the first speaker is that by the end of the day, everything will be covered, and not only coming from me. The other inconvenience is that, of course, a lot of what I was planning to tell you has already been snatched in front of our nose by the other speakers. So it is quite a challenge to talk to you and to captivate your attention on a number of topics that, for me personally, are interesting, or at least that interesting that I want to share it with you. And I could have talked about history. Luckily, I didn't, because I would have bypassed by far by the previous speaker. I could talk about culture. I could talk about whatever. But I would like to talk about the personal experiences I had in Kazakhstan, and that for me are, let's say, very characteristic as well for the country as for its inhabitants. And I will talk about three things. I will talk about future-proof long-term clear vision. I'm going to talk about resilience and capacity to adapt. And I want to talk about the will to change. When it comes to the future-proof clear view, sometimes it's something that we could, let's say, reproach our own governments, that they are always thinking in the short term. Or let's say they are thinking in terms of to the next elections. While I was pleasantly surprised by a speech of President Tokayev in 2019, where he said that although there were some difficulties, and especially because of energy issues, that he said that he would not, let's say, touch the resources of the national fund because it needed to be preserved for the future generations. This is really a long-term view. You have all, let's say, financial possibilities available at hand, but nonetheless, you decide to postpone spending that money to have, let's say, an insurance for the next generations. And of course, history has proven Mr. Tokayev right, because now a lot of investment will be needed for green energy, for green hydrogen, and so on. But for that topic, I will leave the floor to Mr. Marat Petkarov, who is much more expert in that field than I am. But this being said, I had also two personal experiences that sustained my appreciation for this long-term vision of the Kazakh nation. Is my story with Kazakhstan started in December 2014. So in the meantime, it will be 7 years that I've been in contact with Kazakhstan. And I had the honor to meet with Roman Vasilenko, who at that time was Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. And he told me about the upcoming Expo Astana 2017. It's worthwhile to mention that the theme of the Expo in 2017 was then already future energy. So it's perhaps a coincidence, but of course it's also a visionary, let's say, approach of reality. Kazakhstan being a big producer of oil and gas. But I asked Mr. Vasilenko, yes, and how far are the works at present? How are the preparations going? And he said, we are at leveling work. So there was still nothing done in December 2014, just the leveling work. But in 2017, everything opened like as planned, including the pavilions, the lodging, the housing, everything was ready. I think it would be a challenge to do the same here in Belgium or in Europe in general. Secondly, at the same time, this was a trip in May 2015, because of course I was very curious to see for myself what Mr. Vasilenko was talking about. And in May 2015, returning from Astana, now Nur-Sultan, and there was a building standing alone in the middle of nowhere. And I asked my driver, what's this building? And he said, well, that's the town hall. I said, the town hall? That's far from the center of the city. Well, he said, there's no problem, the city will come. And in the meantime, yes, indeed, the city came. So you see, the Kazakhs, they do not do things randomly. So what they do with a certain purpose, and they make it work. So this is something that I really do appreciate in the Kazakh mentality. Okay, I can give you another example. At that time, the Koros dry port, it took shape. And it was only announced in 2013, so 2 years later, it already got shape. And everybody was saying, or at least not everybody, but I heard some rumors saying, well, all the fantasy building a dry port in the middle of nowhere, because, well, it's, you know, Kazakhstan knows that it's dry dune land, so there's nothing there. But if you look at history, in the meantime, in 2017, there were already 185,000 containers shipped at that dry port, and in the meantime, it is commonly known as the Rotterdam of the future. So that's perhaps a bit too much, but nevertheless, it tells you about the let's say the ambition of Kazakhstan. But then again, the idea of providing, and especially for a landlocked country, the idea of providing an alternative for shipping and air transport to reinvent road and railway transport has proven is right. And of course, sometimes fortune is, let's say, helping a hand. And in this case, there are two unforeseen circumstances that gave that idea or that initiative a boost. And it's first of all the blockade of the Suez Canal by the ship Evergrande. I don't have to tell you that up till now, one single ship has, let's say, massive disruptive consequences for the international supply chain. And secondly, and this is something that I lived myself, as an honorary consul of Malta, I was asked by the government of Malta to help the health authorities in Malta with the supply and procurement of PPE, personal protective equipment. The problem was there was an urgent need, and if you could get hold on equipment, you had two problems. The first problem was by air, it's too expensive and you can't get necessary volumes by air, so that's not an option. Secondly, you can do it by shipping, but by shipping, it takes you approximately 40 days to have your shipment coming from China to Europe. So the idea of reviving the transport by rail and by road is reducing by half the time necessary, and you can transport quantities without any limits. So this is something that I really appreciate in the Kazakh mentality. The second topic I want to talk about is the resilience and capacity to adapt. When entering, you will find a leaflet, and there is mentioned that Kazakhstan is composed of 140 ethnic groups, and 18 religious communities. So that is a sign that you need to be resilient if you are, let's say, combining all these nationalities or ethnic groups and religion tendencies. And it's not without any reason that, once again, in the State of the Union of 2019, that President Tokayev mentioned, that the unity of the nation is in its diversity. So you need to be resilient, but also you need to be resilient not as a community as such, but also you need to be resilient in a time where you have unprecedented challenges. And I think that everybody in this room will agree that the last 3 decades we have been witnessing the most challenging, unprecedented events, and not only the number of crises that we are living is extraordinary. It's also the speed and the rapidity with which these crises present themselves. If it's not terrorism, it's climate change. If it's not climate change, it's all prices and so on. So there is always something going on. This is something that the Kazakh prove during history as well, that they are resilient. To give you an example, just think of what happened in 1991 and the turmoil that caused, let's say, the Soviet Union to implode. But then again, out of that came the different nationalities and countries like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan. All these countries suddenly had to redefine themselves, being independent, and that is, of course, a very disruptive and emotional moment. But also on the economic side, the Kazakhs are very resilient. I'm not going to talk about digitalization because everybody's talking about it. I'm not going to talk to you about e-commerce and so on. That's already said and done. But what I would like to emphasize, and this is something that I've been witnessing the 7 years that I've been working with and in Kazakhstan, is that the shift from the massive extractive industries on which the economy is based, and then I'm talking about mining, gas and oil, and there is a clear shift towards small, medium-sized enterprises and also the diversification in the economy. And I think that is a very wise choice because 2018, in the meantime, has proven that indeed, when you're depending on raw materials and on basic materials, the first victims are the countries that are producing these raw materials. Like oil, you need an international or a global recession. The first country hit is the country producing oil and gas. So the idea of having a national fund, by all means, is a visionary idea, so you can overcome these decreases in income and so on. So, but this being said, I think that everybody agrees that Kazakhstan has proven to be a resilient country. And then we have the will to change. Will to change is intrinsically linked to education. It has been said already, we have Erasmus Plus and so on, the increase of students studying abroad. This is always a good sign of how a nation is evolving. But once again, I would like to return to the State of the Union of President Tokayev that hasn't been changed ever since, and on which the Kazakh people is working continuously. At that time, it's just only 2 years ago, but I hope you won't mind me saying, but 2020 was a lost year. The world was on a standstill. So for me, 2019 is as if it were yesterday. The president talked at that moment about political liberalization, as we mentioned already, so I'm not going to enter into detail. He talked about strengthening the importance of the national language. Also, this is one of the topics of countries emerging from a bigger whole to, let's say, identify themselves with language. And we know everything about that. Improvement of the judicial system, that's my cup of tea, of course, and therefore the quality of court decisions. One of the things that is a sign of the time is that the wealth of a country is measured by the number of judicial sentences regarding intellectual property. The more you have, let's say, issues about the intellectual property, the more it is a sign that your country is developing technologies that need protecting. So I hope you won't mind me saying so, but the more lawyers you have, the more prosperous your country is. And then President Tokayev also talked about fight against poaching, protection of wildlife and nature. Once again, very hot topic. And fight against corruption. That is, of course, a fight that every country is conducting. The development of an inclusive economy. It's all very. In 2019, it was perhaps a bit visionary, but in the meantime, it has proven to be, let's say, more than hot topics. Taking care of the needy, the poor and the disabled, and then fair taxation and sound financial regulation. So this all being said, this shows that Kazakhstan is a country in constant progress. And as long as there is progress, it's good. As soon as you have in the country some stagnation, then you're going backwards. You need to evolve constantly. At what pace, I do not express, I do not have, let's say, an opinion on that, but it is necessary to progress. What is important is how you deal with that progress. You can do it in 2 days, two ways. You can do it progressively, and that is called evolution. You can do it constructively, and you're talking about revolution. And as far as I can see and appreciate, Kazakhstan has chosen for evolution, and I think this is the only way to go, especially as Kazakhstan has taken the lead in the economic development, disarmament, the guardian of peace in Central Asia. So, but this being said, I would like to give the floor back to Lid and to Marat Defterov, who is going to talk us definitely about energy. And if there are two things in this world that are of importance, that is water supply and energy. Those are the biggest concerns for every government, and Marat will tell you all about that. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Jean de Brabander, for this very enlightening speech. I mean, especially given your expertise and your own experiences in the region, but also like highlighting, of course, the resilience and the will to change of the country itself and what is happening there. Also in terms of transport and connectivity, which has been mentioned so far in almost in every speech we've heard so far. But of course, I also like the education importance and judicial change and IPR, which is probably more your field of expertise. But of course, evolution and progress is very important. But maybe it's also not up to us to wait for the city to come and to actually grow. I think it's also a need to actually engage ourselves and to go to the city, to go to Kazakhstan itself from a European perspective and to move forward. And now, last but definitely not least, Mr. Marat Defterov, the floor is yours.
Rahmet, I hope you were brushing up on your Kazakh skills. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Ambassador Baykhan, ambassadors of Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, fellow panelists, members of the audience, colleagues, diplomats, journalists, civil society here in Brussels. Very nice to be here, and thank you very much to Axel Gotthaus and Lynn for your really excellent and effervescent moderation, very lively to kind of get this discussion going. Look, I think we've had some, really nice presentations here, and quite sort of diverse, covering spectrum of different topics. What I would like to do in my 10 minutes-ish or so is to reflect a little bit on this very question that you can see in this beautiful banner, 30 years of independence of Kazakhstan. So I would like to talk you through a little bit of what I think this means. What does 30 years of independence of Kazakhstan and indeed other countries in Central Asia and the former Soviet Union, ambassadors here, very welcome. What does that mean for your country and for your countries, for the region? And then I would like to talk a little bit about some areas of, let's say, challenge as well as opportunity within the context of EU-Kazakhstan relations. And there, as my friend Jean referred to my energy kind of hat, I will focus on energy in the second part of my intervention, where I will don my hat of an official of the Energy Charter Treaty Secretariat. The first part of my intervention, I'm going to don my former academic hat, former visiting professor at the University of Kent in Brussels. So I want to talk in a little bit more academic, sort of reflective way, if you like. So again, to pose the question, what does 30 years of independence actually mean for Kazakhstan? Well, let me just say the following. So my first visit to Kazakhstan was in 1997. So it's about 24 years ago. I was quite a young guy back then, and I was an advisor to the to certain strands of the UK government, which were looking to do some export promotion work. I was also there in the context of EU projects. We had the TASIS program at the time. Maybe Boris remembers the TASIS program from the 1990s. It was an important instrument for developing relations between the European Union and the countries of the former Soviet Union. But first thing I want to say is Kazakhstan has really come a long way since that time in this 30-year period. And I really strongly believe, on the basis of my many visits to the country and engagement of its people. I think to understand the country, you really have to go there and engage the society. So I think what we have seen in this 30 years is the establishment of a very viable, modern state based on quite sound system of governance, based on political stability, which I think is a key ingredient, if you like, for the development of a young country, let's say. And it's a country that has seen, relatively rapid economic development. I remember, in my early visits, some of the advisors of the then president and state builder of Kazakhstan, if you like, President Nazarbayev of that time. Kazakhstan was, even written about in the Financial Times as the first Central Asian tiger, if you like. We had this Asian tiger sort of discourse of the Thailands, the Singapores, the Malaysias of this world based on their rapid economic growth. So Kazakhstan did actually, in fact, Indonesia to some degree was a role model, I remember, for the advisors of the president in terms of its development. So, we've seen this type of country emerge, but I would also like to stress that Kazakhstan, and Gene has given us the benefit of his personal experience, which I think is very important of a European traveler, to these lands of, Eurasia, former Silk Road. But, there's still a certain feel of a young country, although, as my neighbor here, Siddiq Nazarov, has given us a lot of history, and that reflects, age-old values and traditions. And I think, we Europeans, or I as an Australian European, if you like, we can take a lot from those values and traditions to our own societies. And sometimes we tend to underestimate, the values from these, let's say, countries, which are ultimately universal values, but, we tend to really, I think, maybe, underestimate, let's say, the contribution to human civilization that these societies actually make. Now, I think we also need to reflect that the Kazakhs themselves are a very confident people. There are many Kazakhs in, international society, from the business world to, the political world. I remember the late Mirsevich Kasyanov, you mentioned nuclear disarmament, and this was a very significant figure in terms of the International Atomic Energy Agency, and ongoing. And Kazakhstan made a very mature early decision, also like Ukraine, to kind of disarm and have its kind of nuclear potential managed by international treaties, which I think was an early sign of maturity at a political level. Gene talked and raised a couple of fascinating things, constant progress, evolution versus revolution. So I think, we've seen much more evolution in the Kazakh case than revolution. So I think, where this kind of points us to today is that I, as someone who has roots in the former Soviet Union, and, Mohit asked me, Marat, are you a Kazakh? And I said, I'm actually, I'm a Deceit, and, but the Kazakhs are my brothers, because Marat is a very common name in Kazakhstan, of course. But for someone like me, I tend to look at Kazakhstan as a pretty normal country today. I know here in Europe, we rely on great travelers like Jean de Brabander to kind of tell us, and we still feel a sense of exoticism about these sort of countries. But for me, it's a normal country. It's a normal country which has forged its own identity in the international arena. And I think, we need to really come to terms with this. And sometimes we don't really, kind of do enough to consider these countries as normal countries. And sometimes that might make them less interesting, because, well, Belgium is probably an interesting country in some ways, but, we tend to, for me, I've lived in Belgium for 14 years and I'm discovering a lot of things here which I find very interesting. But I think ultimately, we're now looking at a very normal country which has forged its position in the international arena. Now, I just want to say a few words on how did we get here? How did Kazakhstan arrive at this kind of, normality, if you like? And then there's a couple of interrelated, let's say, factors that have been at play here in terms of Kazakhstan's arrival. So the first of these, I think, very important to say is Kazakhstan was an early reformer. It was an early, amongst the CIS, let's say, former Soviet Union countries. I remember when I started traveling there in the 90s, we had a fairly advanced banking sector. The financial regulation, let's say, system reminded me of the Gulf states, Bahrain, UAE, these sort of countries, which are more or less run on kind of British financial regulation, and a lot of London kind of bankers were involved in this. But I remember, ABN AMRO Bank from the Netherlands was a very early market entrant in Kazakhstan, and the banking sector was liberalized very early. That gave, I think, very positive signals to the FDI community, that this is a well-run, well-managed, sort of financial sector. And this was really important because, Kazakhstan was, of course, a resource-rich country. So, today we live in the world of, COVID-19 and Greta Thunberg, kind of climate change and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, I think, with Kazakhstan, it was really the oil economy that really was a magnet and attracted very substantial FDI volumes into the country. And while we tend to, kind of try to put that a little bit behind the scenes and talk about climate rightly, sustainability is something that we all strive for today. But I think, the success of the banking sector, the financial industry, and the oil economy that attracted the FDI, this strengthened Kazakhstan's statehood. It lessened Kazakhstan's, or reduced dependence on IFIs. It gave it more international financial institutions. You had much more private equity coming into Kazakhstan. You had much more, strategic investment coming into Kazakhstan. And the government, for better or for worse, but it introduced, relatively sophisticated legal regime for investments in the hydrocarbon sector. Additionally, a very important point, I think, to make is that, and the ambassador mentioned rightly multilateral foreign policy, but here we saw the emergence of Kazakhstan's multilateral foreign policy, because yes, this is a country kind of looking towards Russia, still, it's kind of a big brother sort of geopolitical relationship in a sense, if you like, although partnership with Russia, I would say, than more of a geopolitical relationship. But because Kazakhstan was able to bring online these new oil export routes through the Caspian into the Black Sea, Baku, Tbilisi, Ceyhan, a lot of you probably are not following some of these, major oil pipelines, but this really cemented Kazakhstan's independence and statehood. I remember an old friend of mine, ambassador of the US, Matt Reiser, who was the ambassador in Azerbaijan for a while, was saying, Marat, oil and gas pipelines, they create independence and they create, sovereignty of the state. And this is a really key point. So you really had around those three elements, the early reforms and relatively successful reforms, particularly in the banking sector, the activation of, the energy economy, which is mostly the oil economy at that time. And then, these new oil export routes towards Europe, that really led to a lot of FDI coming into the country. And the important thing was that it's not just about oil. Oil created secondary industries. So when I went to Kazakhstan, in the early 2000s, for example, to do some research on the investment climate, again, for the UK government, Ilham Glisson was the ambassador in London at the time and did quite a lot for British-Kazakh relations. And of course, he was foreign minister as well. I really saw a lot of, let's say, FDI coming into construction, retail sector, and really this was the essence of the development of a market. And I think the more important point to say here is that Kazakhstan was politically relatively independent, multilateral, but the investors could demand better governance. The investors could demand from the government saying, hey, we're here, we're committed to work with you, but we want a good market economy. We want good laws. And the ambassador here is perfectly right when he said that Kazakhstan introduced FDI regimes that were protective of the investors. This is a really key, I think, point. So I think Kazakhstan did a lot of things that were right, in the 90s and 2000s. It was not an easy journey, by the way. I don't think that it was, Disneyland or anything like that, or Paris Disneyland. But you did see the essence of, let's say, Kazakhstan, probably a little bit in front of some of the regional peers with its kind of market economy institutions. And, when the ambassador talks today about figures, as he does, that Kazakhstan accounts for 70% of FDI for the Central Asian region, this is where it comes from. This very sound foundation that has been built. And, also Gene's point was very good about President sort of referring to the preservation of resources and keeping them for future generations. It shows not only maturity of the decision makers, because this is very reflective of what they would tell you in Qatar, for example, with the gas reserves of Qatar, that we're not going to exploit this, we're going to keep it. But it also implies the fiscal soundness and fiscal stability of the state. And indeed, in terms of, I'm finishing the first point where we are, you cannot really do much in the region without kind of Kazakhstan today. I mean, this is a big player. It is an important player. It is, I would say, a mid-sized power at the global level, which is a big statement because we have some big powers, at the global level. So I think I really want to congratulate Kazakhstan on where it has. So then if you just allow me 2 more minutes or so, I will just turn to these two areas of cooperation and challenge, where I see context of EU-Kazakhstan relations, and there's a fair bit here on the energy side. So, I think Boris made some very good points and, covered a lot of the institutional, if you like, sort of aspects of the EU-Kazakhstan kind of track record. So I think it's really important to, talk a little bit about this decarbonization and energy transition. I mean, this is really the elephant in the room in terms of public policy. When we come today to Brussels, this is really what it's all about. Whether it's from the civil society aspect and, the institutions, the government's kind of responding to it, we don't need to discuss the relevance of that, let's say. And, the ambassador has given us some taste of, what Kazakhstan is doing, and Boris has given us a good taste of what the EU supports in terms of, carbon neutrality, in terms of Kazakhstan's green, stable agenda. One point I'd like to highlight that I think is not being focused upon enough is the factor of energy efficiency. I think, post-Soviet economies, and I remember when we talked about Tajikistan as well, with the aluminium sector, in Tajikistan, these massive Soviet industries which are being modernized and, restructured according to, international market standards. But I think energy efficiency, while the EU does accord a fair bit of attention for that in some technical assistance, let's say project, but I think, this is an area that is still underutilized and underdeveloped. We had a meeting last week with the CEO of Naftogaz Ukraine, for example, and Ukraine is one of the most energy-intensive economies still in Europe. And if a country like Ukraine would increase its energy efficiency, let's say value, it could save the amount of money that it is actually making on transit royalties from transit of gas, which is around about 2 billion euros per year. So I think, I do believe that some of these, maybe Boris can comment, but I do believe that some of these EU technical assistance projects do focus on this area. But I think it's an area that we need to kind of develop a little bit more. I'm not an energy efficiency expert myself, but I have colleagues at the Secretariat that are very much engaged in this area. They're helping countries like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, our friends here from the neighboring countries, to develop more effective national energy efficiency strategies. And I would like to see that engaged a little bit more. I do want to also say that, we, the Energy Charter, as an intergovernmental platform, we're probably underutilized, I would say, and we are a platform where all countries of the region are members of the Energy Charter Treaty, and actively support the process. But I would like to see a little bit more, let's say, utilization of us by the EU, because I think there is a fair bit of demand from the Central Asian side. But perhaps, I would suggest that the EU could match the Central Asian demand by, utilizing the Energy Charter as an intergovernmental platform for, various strands of energy cooperation. And just to finish, one other aspect, I think, I guess it's more kind of, international relations, I would use the term as opposed to geopolitics. But I think, EU should, I think, look at Kazakhstan's multilateral foreign policy very much as an asset. This is a major asset, a diplomatic and international relations asset, because, Kazakhstan is one of these countries, in a challenging region that has managed to get right a lot of its foreign policy. And it has pretty good relations. It's an integral part of the Eurasian Union. It has, very good relations with Russia. So I would like to see, as a kind of, let's say, practitioner, and also the United States as well, I would send this message to Washington, to, look at Kazakhstan's multilateral foreign policy very much as an asset. Diplomacy in Kazakhstan is, I think, excellent from my personal experience. So I think they're the two areas, because I think in terms of FDI, just to finish, Kazakhstan is doing quite well. I do not really think the market needs too much intervention, let's say, from the state institutions or supranational institutions to promote FDI. Kazakhstan has moved beyond that level, and you just need kind of the more refinement. But certainly, support on the energy efficiency side, use the Energy Charter more as a platform, and consider the multilateral policy of foreign nature as an asset. I would certainly recommend that. Thank you, and sorry if I've gone too long.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marat, especially on highlighting also the importance of energy efficiency in the energy transition, but also given Kazakhstan as an early reformer and its rapid economic development, it has indeed developed its own identity, which is definitely not to be underestimated. And of course, I'll let Boris answer that question maybe later on, and how the EU can engage more with energy charter here. But first of all, I would like to open the floor for some more questions from the audience, and we'll probably take some questions all at once, and then I'll just let the speakers all respond. So if there are any questions from or comments, indeed, please, if you take the floor, introduce yourself briefly and keep it short and to the point. Any questions or comments for now? Wolfgang Papa, please.
My name is Wolfgang Papa. I'm representing nobody, I myself. I have a question to Mr. Ambassador, if you allow. Maybe I misunderstood you. You mentioned a council of representatives, if I got that correctly, from the people, which the president has established. Who is part of this council? Is it some kind of representation of civil society, NGOs? What is actually the way to select these people in this council or committee? Maybe I misunderstood you. One question. The second question goes to the historian. Sorry, I wouldn't dare to pronounce your name in my linguistic poverty. You mentioned already in the 15th century there was some kind of nationhood. How do you define nationhood? I see from the papers that are lying out here that there are 140 ethnic groups and 18 religious denominations. And you mentioned in this paper as well, there's a free multicultural society. The idea of multiculturalism has been even negated by Angela Merkel and Sarkozy already in the early 2000s. What is multicultural society for you? Thank you.
And some other questions from the audience? In that case, well, maybe I will give the floor to all the panelists before ending and before moving on to the reception. But maybe if you could also highlight what you believe that the biggest challenges are for EU-Kazakhstan relations at the moment, and how you could solve them, or what are the biggest opportunities. So, but first, I'll let Mr. Ambassador answer the question.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for all our panelists that you're such a great opinion, sharing your views and your personal experience, and also Mr. Borges about the 30 years of our our cooperation already done. So, of course, we are expecting the next level of our cooperation, which means indeed the 30 years of our independence is only first step of our modern country. And interesting topics that I wrote a lot of your opinions. And back into your the question, of course, I mentioned about the special body established of the National Council of Public Trust. It's the advisory body of led by our under the president of Kazakhstan, just to conduct open, constructive dialogue with representatives of the public. I mean, our society, of course. The member of this National Public Trust can be the NGOs. For your information, because there are now 27,000 of NGOs, and 70,000 of these NGOs, they are really active when it comes to their attitude, their activities, the legislation process in Kazakhstan. As an example, also, I discussed with the Minister of our information. She mentioned that 90% of the legislation of the amendments in Kazakhstan based on the NGOs proposals. So it's a good idea to have good connection between the authorities and the civil society. I think the National Council of Public is a good idea. The public trust is a good idea because they already had several meetings. The members is changing. It depends on the topic. This open or constructive platform, and also the members of this National Council of Public Trust can be the state-owned agencies, also the NGOs, citizens, and different organizations. I hope that our business administration will continue this approach. and and of course their proposal should consider by our government agencies also. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think Mr. Jumalev also had a question.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Margolan and dear colleagues, speakers. It's more or less a comment, actually, not a question. I would like to thank you very much for such an excellent seminar for all of us, which we did in Brussels. This is definitely due to the COVID time. We missed a lot of meetings and gatherings, but excellent presentation on the book and the region on the occasion of the 30th anniversary. I'd like to congratulate Mohit Ardage for your presence here in Brussels with the presentation of your book. It's a really good contribution for the celebration, not only for Kazakhstan, but for all of our region. We enjoy excellent relations with Kazakhstan. It's an immediate neighbor country and also the main trading partner for Kyrgyzstan. The transit of Kyrgyzstan's goods goes always through Kazakhstan, and we are the member to different regional organizations, like also the Security Organization, the Organization of the Eurasian Economic Union, and the benefits, prosperity of Kazakhstan directly linked for Kyrgyzstan prosperity. So that's why I'd like to congratulate you, Ambassador, on your 30th anniversary. All the comments today expressed by the speakers of the panel, I'd like to join my voice to that. Of course, Kazakhstan is a really economic country. We welcome economic leader in the region, and we welcome your initiatives joining into the Paris Convention and also the ambitious plans on the CO2 emission, which is important for all our region, I think. And we all support these actors. Kyrgyzstan also joining this Paris Convention just recently, and also took an ambitious plans for the future on the CO2 emissions at COP26, and we would like to wish you best prosperity to Kazakhstan for the future. Thank you.
I'll give you the floor to answer also Mr. Papa's question.
Thank you for the question. The Kazakh state, with its own name, was formed in 1465 by the first two Kazakh Khans, first two Kazakh kings, Janibek and Kerim. Our statehood, our nationhood, with such an appeal has been at least 600 years old. My colleague, Madam Lin, spoke earlier about the One Water agenda in Central Asia. In my point of view, as a researcher, I always say that the water agenda issues of water regulation in Central Asia are never exclusive and not solvable. These issues have long been resolved in various parts of the world, primarily in the European Union. This important experience should and can be used by Kazakhstan and Central Asia. In Europe, these issues with a large number of participants were much more complicated. These are the issues of the Rhine, Danube, Vistula, etc. Issues of water regulation in northern, southern, central, eastern, Western Europe, for example. And all of them have been successfully resolved. The EU for Kazakhstan is first of all value and cultural priorities, human dimension, value and legal factors. And as a professor, higher education in the EU countries for young Kazakhstans is one of the desired and priority areas in obtaining a highly competitive and highly quality education. To date, over 2,000 Kazakhstani students have received higher education in Europe, and the author of these books among them. And our 100 European students have attended Kazakhstan under the Erasmus program and classes program, as he said. Internships in EU research centers for young Kazakhstanis and researchers and established scientists joint research projects in fundamental and applied science, a long-established practice of bilateral cooperation. Kazakhstan has chosen standards of the European Bologna process as a national model of higher education. Our ties are European Kazakh. They are very long and go back many centuries. As I said, the first European cartographer who prepared maps of Kazakh state in the Middle Age was a Belgian scientist, cartographer Gerard Mercator. The freedom of movement of goods, capital, services, and people, all these values have been actively implemented in the EU, and they have become model for many parts of the world. For Kazakhstan, green growth and green transition, carbon neutrality, digitalization according to European methodologies are priorities for Kazakhstan.
Thank you very much. Maybe Mr. Yaroshevich, some final concluding remarks as well from your side.
Yes, thank you. Maybe energy efficiency, I will leave it for another time. I wanted to stress two issues, to underline two issues. First, resilience, that was mentioned. We usually speak about state resilience, but also civil society. And we very much welcome, progress done in working with civil society by the president of Kazakhstan. Probably more could be done. And this is an area where we have intense discussions with our Kazakh partners. We recently had a human rights dialogue, Kazakh human rights dialogue. The European Parliament is very much interested. There was a debate, I think, yesterday. I think we very much welcome further inclusion of the civil society in the public debate and in, let's say, state building and so on in Kazakhstan. And the second point that I wanted to mention is the importance of regional cooperation. Once again, we have now this practice of informal meetings of the head of state. Ambassador just showed me some recommendations decided at the latest one. It's consultative meetings. I think it's an extremely important step, which we very much welcome because we can support regional cooperation, but the initiative should come from Central Asia. It's really important to keep the balance between the different interests in the region. We have Kazakhstan, indeed, economic leader. We have Uzbekistan, big demographic and industrial country. We have Tajikistan and the Kyrgyz Republic with a lot of natural resources, water, and big potential in the field of green energy. So I think all that would be or should be subject of further regional cooperation. And for us, extremely important and extremely positive developments that we have seen in the past years in Central Asia.
What I would like to add to what has been said already is that, and I've been advocating it for a couple of years now, me personally, I'm convinced that Central Asia, including Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, is of growing importance in this world. But I also would like to refer to a book that I read a couple of years ago, and I have the habit of rereading books because I could have missed something, and I'm reading now for the second time the book of Peter Frankopan, the book The Silk Road. I really recommend you to read it if you want to understand what Central Asia is all about. But how important it was then, Central Asia will become or is already important in the future. In this regard, that, to my opinion, Central Asia, including Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, could play a major geopolitical pacifier in the region. In this way that when you look at the demographic evolution in Pakistan and India, where will we get our energy from? So these countries, Central Asia, they have a huge potential, not only in hydrogen, solar and wind, but also in hydropower. And this is something that, let's say, should be exploited in a common way. But not only towards Pakistan and India as such, but also towards Europe. And perhaps this will be strange for you to hear, but Kazakhstan and Central Asia in general is very badly known in Europe. And in fact, that's sometimes a good thing, because if there's nothing to say, that means that there's a stable region, that there is no, let's say, upheaval, there are no revolutions, there are no conflicts and so on. And that is very interesting in the EU relation as well, because we all know that if Europe wants to make the switch to green hydrogen, it will be depending on countries like in Northern Africa, or they will be needing to fill up the North Sea with wind turbines. But nevertheless, we will be needing space to produce this green hydrogen. And then, of course, the first ice or the first gas go to Ukraine, go to Central Asia, Kazakhstan by definition. So, to my recognition, Central Asia, Kazakhstan on top, will be playing a major role in providing as well Pakistan, India, as Europe, with the necessary future sustainable fuels.
Thank you very much. Well, do you have like maybe one or two words just before we close? And then, or
Literally, I will be 1 minute. Now, I think the real key issue that we have to think about here is economic growth management. How to manage economic growth in a country like Kazakhstan, which is actually being built on fairly rapid economic growth, and how to align that with decarbonization strategies. This is really the key issue for me in the area of EU, kind of Central Asia, Kazakhstan relations. And there's quite a lot in that. And I think I'd really like to see a lot more private sector participation in that process. Because Kazakhstan has developed a fantastic foundation for markets. A lot more of that. That's all.
Distinguished guests, dear panelists, all of you, once again, thank you very much for your time, for your participation, and I'd like to just summarize some how we would like to develop our country in its future, and of course for us, what mentioned Mr. Uganda, we choose the evolution, and we have to think progressively, and from our side, the definition of our development is really simple. Our stance is clear. We would like to be having a country which has good economic growth, sustainable growth, good neighborhoods, international cooperation, reliable partners with European partners, with the international community, the sciences, and of course, most important is growing our society, Kazakhstani citizens. And of course, the definition is also much. We welcome very much all your initiative for our cooperation. From our side is goodwill, good stance, and we would like a reliable partner based on win-win cooperation. Once again, thank you very much.
thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you to all the speakers and the panelists today. Thank you all for listening to us and joining in online. And so all that rests me is to invite you to raise a glass on the 30 years of independence of Kazakhstan as a congratulatory remark. And also to wish you a very good end of the year celebration. And we all look forward to welcoming you at EIAS and all of our activities in 2022 again. So thank you all very much and enjoy your session.